Hello and welcome to another edition of For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. We are here on the road today in Woonsocket, Rhode Island at the Museum of Work and Culture, and we have been invited into their house. First up, the Executive Director, Dr. Morgan Greff. Thank you for allowing us into your place today. Appreciate it.
It's our pleasure. Thanks for being here, Sean.
So tell, for those who may not be familiar with the Museum of Work and Culture, what is it?
So the Museum of Work and Culture is one of the museums of the Rhode Island Historical Society. My colleague Ann Conway, I know, will be joining you later to tell you a bit more about the history of this particular museum. But it is just one of the 8 sites that the Rhode Island Historical Society operates. We have our Aldrich House headquarters in Providence, the library on Hope Street in Providence as well. That's a research library and archive. We have the John Brown House Museum in historic College Hill. And then we also have 4 pieces of property that are related to King Philip's War.
Wow.
And many people don't know that we actually are the stewards of those. They're not interpreted sites, but they are protected sites.
Now, as Executive Director, do you have a role in all of those places you mentioned, or are you strictly the Work and Culture Museum?
Oh, no.
Okay.
As the Director of the Rhode Island Historical Society,
Okay.
I play a role in all of those museums.
All right. But we happen to be here in this one in Woonsocket. When we came in, it's great to see a museum active with people, with guests, and it was when we came in and we're shooting fairly early, but it seems to be very popular, very active, and very beautiful
Thank
place
you.
here, too. I hesitate to call it a facility because it's not that. It's a museum, right?
It is a museum, and it's really a great partnership. The museum was formed as a partnership with the city of Woonsocket. The city of Woonsocket actually owns this building that we are in today, and the Rhode Island Historical Society operates it. And we wouldn't be able to do what we do without the city itself, and for the last 17 years without the support also of the National Park Service through the John H. Chafee Blackstone River Valley National Heritage Corridor Commission.
The fact that you can even remember all of that, how does that possibly fit on anyone's business card is what I want to know.
It's a great acronym that no one can remember either.
Right, but you, not only the acronym, but all the verbiage for it too.
Lots of practice.
So as Executive Director, what is your role? What are your day-to-day duties?
Well, like so many people who work in museums, there's no such thing as a normal day.
Right, every day is different, right?
Every day is different, and every day is fascinating in its own way. Some days I'm here in Woonsocket more, some days I'm at John Brown House. Other days I'm out on the road. I'm giving lectures, sometimes to students, sometimes at retirement communities, other times at local universities. And we're really out bringing history to people as much as we're inviting them in. So I have an administrative role, certainly. We have 33 staff members. We have multiple facilities. So there's a lot of administration to do. And as a private nonprofit, not a state agency, we also have a lot of requirements that all the fun reporting you can imagine that's necessary. So I have an incredible team that supports me in all of that. So I don't have to do much of this alone, and a tremendous board of directors as well.
When you talk about nonprofits and you're talking about sometimes the difficulty in raising funds, because it's certainly not just based on admission for people coming in, that's probably a small part of it, right?
Yeah, very
How do
small.
you get funded?
So we're funded in multiple ways. We are fortunate enough and have been for the last 150 years or so to receive some support from the state of Rhode Island, some from the city of Woonsocket, but we rely on members. We are a membership organization, and those members are not just our community, but they are, as they are for public radio, for public television, the way that we continue to operate and keep our prices low so that families and children can keep coming into our museums. We have an endowment that we raise funds for as well, and we receive grants from private foundations, from federal groups like the NEH and the Institute of Museum and Library Sciences. So we are continually applying for funds to find ways to bring people to our sites, to digitize our history, and to make everything that we do more accessible. Anne will probably tell you a bit more about some of the amazing programming that she's been working on here at the museum. None of that work would be possible without the incredible foundations that we have in the state of Rhode Island.
Was it difficult, and it always seems to be, and I always ask this question of nonprofits, during the time of the recession, which we're supposedly coming out of now, for people in general, you wouldn't necessarily think they want to give, I would imagine, but this might not necessarily be close to the top of their list of their ability to be able to spend money on, right?
It's very hard. For many people, of course, as we lived through the recession, we had to make choices about our own personal ability to give. And we also saw people very generously reaching out for service organizations to help those others who were worse off than they. And so museums in general, history, people say, is that really a vital need? We were lucky enough that people understood the educational value that places like the Historical Society bring to the state, the cultural value that they bring. One of the ways in which Rhode Island is really bouncing back is through its tourism economy, and history and heritage is an incredible part of that.
Right.
When we look at the state of Rhode Island, the smallest state we've got, there are 464 history and heritage organizations right here in Rhode Island.
Wow.
We're just one of those, but we're the one with the statewide mission. So we really use that as an opportunity to get out there and talk to people about the fact that we have to protect this. Once it's gone forever. And those lessons of the past, those stories that we learn and we retain, they define who we are today. We then have the opportunity to define the future.
You have to have people who care, and a lot of people who care enough to want to be involved in preserving.
Exactly. Who want to preserve not just their own family stories, but understand the value of preserving all of our family's stories. And history grows every day. The room we're sitting in right now at the Museum of Work and Culture tells the story of people who came to this community, to the Blackstone River Valley, in the 20th and 21st century. This is a story that will keep on going. So it's not that history ended at some certain date. We're making more of it every day. And we need to be there to provide access to it and make sure those stories are told.
There's an advantage to being in New England. It is old. It's just it's a fact. So you're going to have the ability to be able to you need the ability to be able to have people want to preserve, but you have the history. That's what you need to start out with, right?
We do. And we have the history here. And Rhode Island is the least written about of the original 13 colonies.
Did they figure there was just not a lot going on because it was so small?
Well, what's funny is, in fact, it's quite the opposite. It's that Rhode Island somehow is always the exception to the rule. So we look at how Massachusetts or Connecticut are developed. Rhode Island was always a little bit different. We heard that a lot from Massachusetts, but we
Different
see it
how?
We see something as simple as mill development. When we think of mills, we often think of Lowell. You think of the huge boarding houses. Mill development was a little bit different in Rhode Island. We are the originators with Slater Mill, the longest running, but the first sustained factory in the United States. But the villages had an interesting quality about them, spanning both sides of the rivers, small communities that were largely insular in that they had their own schools, they had their own farms. Lonsdale is a wonderful example of that. And you had entire families that are living in these areas, not a worker dislocated from their family. So there's a way that we don't fit in with that bigger narrative. The narrative of the Plymouth plantation, Massachusetts Bay, we've got Roger Williams and Ann Hutchins and Dr. John Clark and all of these folks who didn't fit in there. And some would politely say asked to leave and were banished from the colony of Massachusetts.
So you're saying it's a leper colony then, right? No.
We're saying it's a colony devoted to the idea of independent thought and liberty of conscience. It was a colony that was founded on an ideal that said if you had ideas, if you had the will to put those to work, then Rhode Island is the place for you. We don't care what you believe religiously. We don't care what you worship. That is your own private business. Doesn't mean we're going to like it.
Right.
But we're not going to tell you how to live. But if you want to come here and try something, this is a place where you can do that. And consequently, we had an incredible influx of innovation. We see that in the Industrial Revolution. And with that came incredible waves of immigrants that still come to our shores. In the 20th century, Providence is the fourth busiest immigration port in the United States.
So there's a lot of mixed culture in there, isn't there?
It's incredible. It adds to a dynamism that you see in a place like Rhode Island that's small enough that it is dominated by these ports where people are exchanging ideas and they're building on each other's ideas and creating what was an economy that was the wealthiest economy in the United States in 1900.
Wow. Times have changed a little bit, huh?
They have.
Yeah.
And Rhode Island has been struggling a little bit with how it sees itself, how it defines itself, and how do we stop understanding ourselves as purely an industrial economy, which was what we were known for. And so I think that we're at a really exciting moment when so many people are paying attention to this and saying, yeah, there are struggles, but how do we look at our history and understand what they were doing right and take the positive lessons from that, moving on from the choices that were made that were detrimental or exploitive of others, but really building on that positive original founding philosophy of a place that welcomes everyone and is open for business.
You can change and evolve because usually you have to in order to survive, but at the same time, you can reflect back in a place like this to know what your humble beginnings were, if that's a
Right.
phrase to describe it.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I think that every generation we can look back and see how various groups who've come to the United States, come to Rhode Island, have made a place for themselves, have established themselves, have grown into a strong and vibrant community. And how do we then take that vibrancy and use it to bring everybody else up as well?
That everything that you just described, would you be able to walk into the Museum of Work and Culture and be able to sort of discover that and learn it going through the different rooms here?
I think so very much. I mean, Rhode Island is the most heavily immigrant state in the United States from 1880 to the present. And this museum is really the only public place to explore that. So you walk into this museum and you see that folks in Quebec, when you first come in, are confronted with choices. And they make a choice, the story we tell, to come to the US. And we follow them. And this path, though, through the lens of French-Canadian history, because Woonsocket was the largest French-speaking community south of Montreal for much of the later 19th and early 20th century. So we look at it through that lens, but it is a universal story of how you come, the problems and struggles that you have as you try to establish yourself. They met with incredible prejudice when they came to Rhode Island. And that is a story that newer immigrants can come here and can relate to as well. It's not something that we're proud of, that folks still struggle with this today, but it's a very empowering thing to see that this is part of the struggle as we make ourselves into French Americans.
So you're not, when you come, you're not hiding anything. You're not sort of rewriting history to paint a more rosy picture. The history is what it is, and you will learn exactly what it is when you come in.
We're going to present you with facts. They're curated facts.
Not
They're
all of
facts
them
that
positive, right?
Certainly not all of them positive. A lot of them are hard. When you come to our John Brown House Museum in Providence, we're going to talk about the slave trade.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about some of the things that many folks wish we never had to speak about it again and just want to put it in our past. But we have to be willing to grapple with the uglier parts of our history so that we can make sure that we don't make the same mistakes again. And so here at the Museum of Work and Culture, you're going to see the good and the bad. And we're going to give you the tools that you need, not to tell you what to think, but we hope to make people think. We want people to have informed debates about where we are in the present. We don't pretend to have all the answers, and we certainly wouldn't want to tell people what they are to believe. This is Rhode Island, after all. We don't do that.
Right.
But we want to make sure that you have the tools that you need to take home to your family dinner table, to take into your classroom, to have an informed discussion, a thoughtful and empathetic discussion about the situation that we find ourselves in today.
You're a historian, and it's fascinating to talk to you off the air as well as on the air, because an historian, well, it's not an opinion. It's a fact. It's history, and you can just talk about anything, and you will be able to give your take on it.
Well, it's
everything from all the way back to Egypt, by the way.
What's so important about history is, it gives us an incredible context for the choices that we're going to make. It makes every conversation, to me, richer. And again, the process, there's history as in the facts, and then there's the process or the profession of history, which is a continual conversation with the past. And that conversation is different every day because the present is different. And so we take our own identity into those conversations as we look at documents and we look at artifacts. When you come to our library and you immerse yourself in the writings of Roger Williams and also the writings of my grandmother, that's the range of materials that you can find at our library, and all of them inform us and ultimately make us different people as we listen to the words and see the thoughts of these incredible people who came before us.
We are almost out of time on this segment. I want you to give out the website for people to go and
Sure.
learn more. What is it?
It's www.rihs.org. So our initials, easy to find. And on there, you're going to find a complete calendar of events as well. We have some great things to do over the summer. Down in Providence, you can join us on Thursday nights for our Concerts Under the Elms. You can come down to Newport and see some incredible things at the Newport Antique Show this summer at the end of July with the Newport Historical Society. We're partnering with them to bring 50 objects that shaped Rhode Island. And you can come to gallery nights, which is a great way to participate in a lot of the history and culture that Providence has to offer. And I know Anne's going to tell you more about what you can do up here in Woonsocket. But summer's a great time for history in Rhode Island. So we hope people will take a look at that website and see us this summer.
Dr. Morgan Greff, the Executive Director, Museum of Work and Culture. It was fascinating. The time went by. Wish we had more time, but thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Sean.
We'll take a break and come back. I'm Sean Murphy. This is For the Record. Stay with us. Welcome back to For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. We're here in Woonsocket, Rhode Island today at the Museum of Work and Culture. And in this segment, we have the director of the Museum of Work and Culture, Anne Conway. Thank you for, again, allowing us into your place today. Very much appreciate it.
Well, it's our pleasure, and thank you for being here.
So we're really going to get into the nuts and bolts of what is going on in the Museum of Work and Culture. What I'd like you to do is to paint a picture for us, and when you first walk in, and give us the experience as you're taking the tour around the museum.
Sure. Well, the Museum of Work and Culture tells the story of work and the story of immigration, of the people who came to work in the mills of Woonsocket. Of course, the story did not happen only in Woonsocket. It happened along the Blackstone River. It happened in many of the cities and towns along all over New England. So it was the Industrial Revolution. It was a time where manpower was needed. So the mill agents were, the mill actually sent agents to recruit people. And in this particular area, they sent agents to recruit people in the province of Quebec.
That's like
So-
a long way to go to get some people,
It's
huh?
a long way to go, but they knew that people needed work.
Right.
They knew that there was a situation at the time where first of all, the families were very, very large, and the farms were not producing well, and people needed work. So they sent agents to recruit, and people came and started to come to Woonsocket and came by hundreds and thousands, and Woonsocket became the most French city in the U.S. by 1920.
Wow, no
with
kidding.
more
Wow.
than 70% of its population that was from Canada. So people came with the intention of keeping up what they call la survivance. And la survivance is the main theme of the museum, and it really means survival. But it was also it was a fight that the French Canadians pursued to keep three things: to keep their culture, their language, and their faith. And you see that story throughout the museum. So you, when you arrive, you see a replica of a farmhouse. So we start our story here at about 1875, and you see the mom and the dad at the farm with their child that's helping out in the field. The mom is making the clothing. The dad is working, growing the vegetable and everything that the family needs, basically. Families depended on the seasons. Work was really, described by, the seasons, and people worked from sunrise to sundown.
Hard work, backbreaking work, right?
It was hard work.
Yeah.
It really was, and with just making very little and having trouble to sometimes take care of your 10, 12, 15 children. I mean, it was not unusual.
Times are different, for
yes,
sure, yeah.
Absolutely.
So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so you see this, you enter the farmhouse and you see the type of life that was going on then, and you read about the decision, and you can hear the voices actually of two young women who were sleeping. One morning they woke up and they heard their parents talking about leaving and coming to the United States, and one wants to go but one wants to stay. And it's really a scenario that happened over and over because it was a huge decision to make.
By the way, you mentioned hearing, you can hear the sounds. Maybe you might be able to hear the sounds of just the ambient noise, since we are in the museum now. The different sections of the museum, it's narrated, and not only that, but also just regular people, customers, I guess, that are coming through the museum. So that's the sounds you're hearing in the background. I just wanted to let people know that.
Absolutely, and it is a self-guided tour.
Okay.
So when people come in, we give them an introduction and we give them a floor plan, and then they go on. But it's very interactive. There are buttons to press and games to play. So that's why we,
And
hear
we are in the
noise.
museum right now, so there are tours, there are people passing through right now as we speak. So we're here live, and they're just coming through, and people are enjoying themselves. One thing I wanted to get to before we run out of time is the various programs that you wanted to mention here in the museum. So talk about that a little bit.
Well, school programs is actually, we're coming to the end of our very busy season.
Yeah.
Just in the past 6 weeks, we've had over 850 students coming through. So we have a really great educational program for teachers. When they call, we have actually an array of programs to offer. So we do not only tours of the museum, but we present life history presentations. We do outdoor walking tours, and we have new industrial games that we play with the kids, assembly lines, different things. So it's really great. We had just this morning, kids participated in a treasure hunt, a scavenger hunt throughout the museum. So it's really it's a great place to bring, especially we take kids of all ages, but we'd like to start with the fourth graders on once the children have been prepared in the classroom, once they've studied about immigration and the Industrial Revolution.
At least they can understand it a little bit when they come in, right?
A little bit, but we're very welcoming to young families to come with the kids and introduce them to history at a young age.
But normally when the kids are coming in, it's a field trip environment, right?
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
And I would imagine they have a great time learning, because it's a very visual museum too. And like you said, it's self-guided, but there are lots of stuff to read, pictures, things to look at, take pictures. I would imagine a lot of people are taking pictures. And in this day and age of social media, all those pictures are ending up on Facebook and Twitter. And then if they tag the museum, that's great too. So
yes,
it's a lot of advantages for you too. Website one more time, by the way, for people.
Sure, it's www.rihs.org.
And for like times of operation, admission fees, stuff like that, mention that a little bit too.
We're open every day but Mondays. And we have weekend hours where we're open from 10 to 4 on Saturdays and 1 to 4 on Sundays. And admission is only $8 for adults and $6 for seniors and students, and children under 10 are free with an adult.
By the way, are there packages where they could go to some of the other places that we mentioned in the first segment, as far as like almost a membership kind of a thing?
Absolutely. A membership to the Rhode Island Historical Society will take you to all our museums, programs, free of charge. So it's a really, really good investment.
Good deal. Yeah,
It's a good deal.
So when the kids are graduating and they're out of school for the season, and you don't have those field trip type activities, what happens in the summer when school is out?
Well, it's sometimes a little hard to compete with the great Rhode Island beaches, But when it's too hot, people like to come to the museum. And when it's rainy, people like to come to the museum.
So bad weather helps you out there a little bit, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And so we get summer camps. We get a lot of, counselors will book and bring the kids. And we get a lot of families. And we get many, many visitors from Canada and from overseas. Just our registry, our book just tells us that since, I believe, January, we've had visitors from 6 different foreign countries. So it's pretty exciting to see that they come to Woonsocket to see the museum.
Let's take one more break and come back. We'll do a quick break. I'm Sean Murphy. This is For the Record. We'll be right back. So Anne Conway, the director of the Museum of Work and Culture. Is there still a large French-speaking population in this area? Because I want you to say something in French.
Okay.
All right.
Non, pas vraiment.
Okay.
No, not anymore. People, the older generation,
Yeah.
still speaks French. People have, I think, are very true to their culture, very interested in knowing more about their past, but unfortunately you don't hear the language on the streets of Woonsocket like you did several years ago.
Well, we're going to put the website up on the screen one more time for everybody. Ann Conway, the director of the Museum of Work and Culture. Thanks for spending a few minutes with us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
That's our show for today. You can see this show and many others on our YouTube sites. Until next time, this is For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. Take care.